In what is shaping up to be one of the most revealing, uncomfortable, and deeply relatable moments in recent Kardashian family television history, Kourtney Kardashian Barker has found herself at the center of a fascinating and somewhat controversial situation after she essentially zoned out during what should have been an incredibly serious, frightening, and emotionally charged conversation with her sister Kim Kardashian about a legitimate death threat that had been made against the reality television star and business mogul, choosing instead to completely change the subject and ask her visibly stressed and concerned sister whether she had ever tried eating a date with butter and sea salt as a snack, a bizarre non-sequitur that left Kim absolutely stunned, frustrated, and questioning whether her older sister was actually paying any attention whatsoever to the deeply concerning information she was attempting to share about a terrifying situation that had forced her to completely change her daily routine and take extreme security precautions to protect herself and her 4 children from potential harm.
A warm welcome to Celebrity Gossip.
Please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you do not miss the latest updates and hot gossip on the Kardashians and your favorite celebrities. During this week's incredibly dramatic and emotionally charged episode of the Kardashians, which continues to provide viewers with unprecedented access to the real lives, genuine struggles, and authentic dynamics of one of the most famous and scrutinized families in the entire world, Kourtney Kardashian Barker, who is the oldest of the Kardashian sisters at 46 years old and is currently navigating the challenging and all-consuming early stages of motherhood with her youngest son Rocky, who was born in November of 2023 with her husband Travis Barker, had invited her sister Kim over to her beautifully designed and meticulously decorated house to discuss some of the exciting home renovations that she has been planning, implementing, and obsessing over as she works to create the perfect living environment for her blended family. As the two sisters sat together in what appeared to be a casual and relaxed setting that seemed perfect for the kind of deep, meaningful, and supportive conversation that siblings should be able to have with one another, especially when one of them is dealing with something as serious and frightening as a legitimate threat to her personal safety. The conversation naturally shifted from the relatively light and superficial topic of home design choices to the much heavier and more serious subject of Kim's incredibly busy, stressful, and demanding schedule that requires her to juggle multiple businesses, for children, legal studies, acting projects, and the constant pressures that come with being one of the most recognizable and photographed people on the planet. It was during this portion of their conversation that Kim, who is 44 years old and has spent the better part of 2 decades living her life under intense public scrutiny and dealing with countless security concerns, privacy invasions, and threats from strangers who feel entitled to comment on, criticize, or even threaten her simply because of her fame and visibility, candidly and vulnerably shared with her sister that she had been dealing with an extraordinarily stressful and frightening situation involving a hit that had allegedly been put out on her life, a revelation that should have immediately captured Kourtney's full attention, concern, and support as any loving sister would naturally provide when hearing such disturbing and potentially life-threatening news. Especially with last week with the hit out thing, Kim begins to explain as she opens up about the various sources of stress that have been weighing heavily on her mind and affecting her emotional well-being during what has clearly been an incredibly difficult and anxiety-inducing period in her life. The response from Kourtney, however, was not what Kim or anyone watching at home would have expected or hoped for from a family member who should be providing comfort, concern, and unwavering support during such a frightening time. "I never heard about that," Kourtney replies with what appears to be genuine confusion, indicating that somehow this incredibly serious and significant piece of information about a threat to her sister's life had never been communicated to her or had perhaps been shared but had not penetrated through the fog of new motherhood and the all-consuming focus that comes with caring for an infant who requires constant attention, feeding, and nurturing. "What?" Kim exclaims with obvious shock and disbelief that her sister somehow remained completely unaware of this major security threat that had required significant changes to her daily life and routine. "There is a hit out on you?" Kourtney asks, finally seeming to grasp the seriousness and severity of what Kim is trying to tell her about the dangerous and frightening situation that she has been navigating largely without the knowledge or support of her older sister. Kim then goes on to explain in greater detail the extent to which this threat had disrupted her life and forced her to take extraordinary security measures to protect herself and her children from potential harm. "I had to change all my cars because I could not drive and I did not want my kids to think anything was weird," Kim reveals, demonstrating the delicate balance she had to strike between taking the threat seriously enough to implement significant security changes, while also trying to maintain a sense of normalcy and routine for her 4 children who she works so hard to protect from the more frightening and disturbing aspects of fame and public life. So we all were like, we think it is a scam, Kim continues, trying to provide some context and perspective on how she and her security team had ultimately assessed and analyzed the credibility of this particular threat after conducting investigations and gathering information about its origins and the person who had allegedly made or facilitated it. But for a good 48 hours, she adds, her voice trailing off as she recalls what must have been an absolutely terrifying period of uncertainty when she did not know whether the threat was genuine or fabricated, whether someone was actually planning to harm her, or whether this was simply an attempt to frighten her or gain attention. We are pretty sure that this person in jail just wanted a good standing with me from behind bars, Kim explains, suggesting that the individual who had been connected to this alleged hit may have been attempting to gain favor or establish some kind of relationship or connection with her through this disturbing and inappropriate means. Or maybe it was a conversation that was had, she speculates, trying to piece together exactly what had happened and how serious the threat actually was. Like, what would this cost or how do we do this, she continues, indicating that there may have been discussions or inquiries about the logistics of carrying out such a violent act even if there was never any genuine intention to follow through with it. We have no idea, Kim concludes, acknowledging the uncertainty and confusion that still surrounds this frightening situation. It is at precisely this moment, right in the middle of Kim's vulnerable and serious discussion about a legitimate threat to her life and the stress and fear that it has caused her, that Kourtney does something that is so unexpected, so bizarre, and so completely tone-deaf that it leaves Kim absolutely speechless and genuinely hurt by her sister's apparent lack of interest or concern about what she has just shared. Wait, have you ever had a date with butter inside and sea salt? Kourtney suddenly asks, completely abandoning the serious conversation that had been taking place and pivoting to what can only be described as the most random and inappropriate topic change imaginable under the circumstances. It is a really good snack, she adds enthusiastically, as if this information about her preferred method of consuming dried fruit is somehow relevant or important in the context of a conversation about death threats and security concerns. No, Kim responds flatly, her tone making it abundantly clear that she is not interested in discussing snack foods at this particular moment. But thanks for really supporting this deep conversation, she adds with obvious sarcasm and frustration, unable to hide her disappointment and hurt that her sister could not even maintain focus long enough to provide basic emotional support during a discussion about something as serious as a threat to her life. The tension and awkwardness of this moment is palpable even through the television screen, and viewers watching at home could not help but feel secondhand embarrassment and concern about the state of the relationship between these two sisters who have spent decades navigating the complicated dynamics of fame, family, and the constant pressure to maintain public images while also dealing with very real and genuine personal struggles, fears, and challenges. In a confessional segment that provides crucial context and explanation for her seemingly callous and insensitive behavior during this conversation with Kim, Kourtney is asked directly by the production team what exactly was going through her mind when she made the decision to interrupt her sister's deeply serious confession about stress and security threats with a random recommendation about how to prepare and consume dates as a snack. Because I get so bored talking about everyone and their stuff, Kourtney explains with remarkable honesty and self-awareness, acknowledging that she has reached a point in her life where she simply does not have the mental or emotional capacity to engage deeply with the problems, concerns, and dramas of her family members, even when those problems involve legitimate safety concerns and life-threatening situations. I just do not want to be rude, she continues, suggesting that on some level she is aware that her behavior might come across as inconsiderate or hurtful even though that is not necessarily her intention. But I think it is when you are like a new mom and you have a younger baby, she explains, attempting to provide a biological and psychological explanation for her inability to focus on anything beyond her immediate maternal responsibilities and concerns. I just feel like I do not relate to any of you and I just want to go home, Kourtney admits with startling candor, revealing the deep sense of disconnection and isolation that she is currently experiencing as she navigates this particularly intense phase of new motherhood with a baby who requires constant attention and care, leaving her with little mental or emotional energy for the concerns and problems of others, even those others being her own sisters. I think it is an instinctual thing, like how they say you get mom brain, Kourtney continues, leaning into the widely recognized phenomenon of maternal preoccupation and the biological imperative that drives new mothers to focus almost exclusively on the needs and well-being of their infants to the exclusion of nearly everything else. Your body is made to just focus on your baby, she explains matter-of-factly. That is just what it is. I am breastfeeding, so I care about a butter date, she states bluntly and unapologetically. Like eating a date with butter and salt on it. That is what I care about. In her own confessional segment that provides a counterpoint to Kourtney's explanation and justification for her distracted and seemingly unsupportive behavior, Kim does not hold back in expressing her genuine frustration, hurt, and disbelief that her sister could be so completely checked out and uninterested during what should have been a moment of sisterly bonding, support, and concern. Kourtney, I just told you that there is a hit out on my life, and you are talking about a butter date, Kim says with exasperation and disappointment evident in every word. Deep court, she adds sarcastically, emphasizing just how profoundly shallow and inappropriate Kourtney's response to this serious situation truly was. This entire exchange has sparked countless conversations among fans and viewers of the show who are divided in their reactions and interpretations of what transpired between these two sisters during this uncomfortable and revealing moment of reality television. New episodes of The Kardashians drop Thursdays on Hulu.